Hey everybody, welcome to the new episode of Lunch with Lindsay. I'm Lindsay Czarniak. I'm so excited that you're spending some time with me. Today, I'm going to talk off the heels of Mother's Day about work-life balance. A lot of people ask me about that, and I know a lot of folks are thinking the same thing. It's so hard to do both. So I'm inviting a couple friends to this conversation. My friend Paula Faris, she's a journalist, also entrepreneur, and my friend Stephanie Szostak. Stephanie, also an entrepreneur, but an accomplished actress as well. So can't wait to bring you guys into this conversation. But first, come on into my office. Let's go. Hello. Hi. Hi. It's so good to see you. Thank you for being here.
Yeah, good to be here. This looks amazing.
Thank you. Oh, that's right. You haven't been to the new office.
No, I love it.
Thank you. I'm so excited to get you, Stephanie, to meet Paula, because Paula Faris, here you are entering the conversation now. Paula, hi.
Hi,
Paula,
ladies.
She's my friend, someone that I've looked up to for a long time. You have so many hats. You are a journalist, obviously on air for years with Good Morning America, The View, but you're also an author, and you are certainly now an entrepreneur. And the book that you just wrote, You Don't Have to Carry It All, is amazing. Paula, Stephanie, accomplished actress, TV, film, also an entrepreneur. So you're creating something that's super exciting too.
Yes. Good to meet you, Paula.
Good to meet you too. And Lindsay tells me that you're French.
Yes.
So I should say bonjour.
Bonjour. But, I am half French, half American. So don't, be intimidated. And I've lived in this country for 30 years.
Okay.
So my English is pretty good. But I will fumble in my words.
What you're saying is we've ruined you, right? We've totally ruined you being here in America.
Right.
Because I love France. I love France.
I love America.
So
That's why I live here.
She said she doesn't mind sitting close because she's French. So this helps us in this endeavor. However, she did just wrap season 5 of A Million Little Things, where she plays Delilah. So congrats. So awesome.
Thank you.
That's awesome. That's incredible.
Congratulations.
Quite an accomplishment.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. We're both birthing different things in this season, right? I mean, you're birthing a new season. I'm birthing a book and a company. Lindsay, you're birthing this show and podcast and all the things you've got going on. So lots of labor and delivery.
Lots of labor, right, literally. But seriously though, I love this conversation with the three of us. And to be honest, at first, Paula, I was going to talk to you, and I asked Stephanie to come over because there's so many things I want to ask you. And then I thought this really makes more sense to have the three of us, because I do think there's a lot we have in common. We are all in different parts of the industry, I would say, like the TV, entertainment, news industry. Paula, accomplished in news, right? And talk. Stephanie, acting, me, sports, and whatever else, right? But I also think we have got kids that are not too far apart from each other. We all marry men that are slightly younger. Great.
That's right.
Right?
So I have the oldest? I have a college sophomore and a college high schooler. 2 boys.
You have a high schooler and a college student. I have elementary, middle school, and high school covered. And Lindsay, you have elementary school covered,
I have
right?
3rd and kindergarten covered. Yeah.
Okay, amazing. Wow, so Kay is the youngest, kindergarten through college.
Yes.
Very
cool.
And
We've covered all our bases.
Totally. And I think it's awesome because I think my perception is we've all made decisions. I think people don't talk enough about decisions that you make as a working mom, because I know the way I feel is I haven't so often, I only have a handful of people that I feel like I can really ask, like, hey, what would you do in this instance? Or how did you handle this? And also sort of dealing with the ramifications of a decision. I don't know. I'm all into being open and honest about how it looks for people in the workforce now for women. And Paula, that's what I love about your book, and listening to it, reading it, because I do both. That is part of how I attack a book.
That's amazing.
And then I read it because you don't know when you're going to have time, right? But
yeah, totally.
Yeah, I love the way you opened your book, and I know you talked about how you basically had people that ask you, "What do you do now?" And at that point, you didn't know how to answer, and that struck me right here. Really?
Yes. A lot of what's next, and you feel somehow embarrassed that you don't know. When I think you should be like, I don't know, and it's a great opportunity when we don't know.
I feel like here in America, and you're probably going to have a different perspective. I mean, you're French American, Stephanie, but the first question you ask somebody is what's your name, and then you follow it up with what do you do, right? And it's like almost implied that that's the only thing we bring to the table. And as women, we're programmed to get so much of our identity from our job and so much of our identity from motherhood, and we often don't give ourselves permission to try new things and new seasons. And so what Lindsay was just referring to is, I pumped the brakes in 2018 at I guess you could say the height of my broadcasting career when I was anchoring GMA and co-hosting The View, because I was burnout, right? You get to the top and you're like, what good is it, to gain the world but sell your soul in the process? And it's just like being a working mom wasn't working for me. And so I stepped into a much less prestigious position at ABC. I demoted myself, and then they let me go a year and a half later. And
Hold
it
on
was
one
in that
second
moment.
before you move on there, because I want to hear that.
Yeah,
But did you go to them after
yeah.
deciding like it's too much? And did you say, were you the one that was like, hey, here's what I would like to do differently?
Yes. Yes. Because working weekends, it's just I was working weekends, I was working weekdays. I never had consistent days off. I had three little kids at the time. I wasn't really spending much time with my family. Um, and like, Carry, the company that I have formed out of this pain, we believe that being a working mom should work, and it just really doesn't in America. You have to often choose between kids and career, and you're carrying a ton of mom guilt, and you're burnt out, and you never feel like you're nailing it. But I said, yes, I said, I want to work Monday through Friday. I want to have some consistent hours so that I can be present with my family, right? And that was 2018. And then the beginning of the pandemic, like a lot of other moms, they let me go. And I never really got a reason. It's still, I wouldn't say that I'm healed from it, because I just think you don't always have a pretty tidy bow on some certain aspects of your life. But I'm grateful for it. It's weird to say I'm glad I lost my job, but I am glad I lost my job because it forced me to really figure out what I wanted to do next, right? That question. I wanted to be more present with my kids, especially at this time in their lives. And I wanted to advocate for mothers in the workplace, because I know, like, it's impossible to be a working mom. And then the marginalization on top of that, where once you become a mom, you're like, oh, she's not a leader anymore. Oh, she's passed over on promotions. She's paid less. I mean, this is all statistical fact. So it forced me to pivot. I said I can stay in news, or I can kind of go for this thing. Um, that I want to do, which is advocate for working moms. I didn't really know what it was going to look like. But yeah, I kind of blew up my life and moved to a small town in South Carolina and formed Carry. So, and here I am talking to you ladies.
Well,
Yeah, no.
can I jump
Yeah,
in?
go ahead,
Because
please.
I want to say, first of all, congratulations for having the balls, even though you're a woman, to do that.
Yes. I have balls. I have two boys, so that's a very common word in this house. So I feel like just having two boys, I can just by proxy, you can say that I have balls. I appreciate that. Okay.
And maybe that's not actually for being maybe that's not even politically correct. Maybe just like, because what does that say about us?
Courage.
Yeah,
Courage,
courage.
courage.
But I did a similar thing. I was on this show, A Million Little Things, as a series regular, and it shot it shot in Vancouver, and I live here in Connecticut. It shot for 9 months out of the year, so I did it for
Okay.
2 years, and then the pandemic happened. The borders closed, and so I went same thing to the producers and the writers, and I said, I can't, that means I can't go back and forth anymore. And even without the pandemic, it was just, after 2 years of doing it, it just felt like I can't do it the same way anymore. So
How long were the spots of time that they were needing you? Was it like, because that changed everything with that, right? Is that true?
With the pandemic?
Yeah.
Yeah, I had to quarantine for 2 weeks in a hotel once I got to Vancouver. So then
Right.
Normally I try to go home every 2 weeks or every
Okay.
3 weeks, which is long. But it went really great for the first 2 years, and I loved what I did, and I loved the people. But it had sort of taken a toll a little bit, or I knew it would if I kept going. So I did a similar. than you
Yeah.
did.
But what happened? Because now you just wrapped season
Yeah.
5. So did they
So
work around you or what?
they were super nice and understanding, and I just was in a few episodes for season 3 and 4, and then they asked me, "Do you want to be back for season 5?" And I said, "For 5 episodes, if that's possible. At the end, I would love to." And
Right.
I said, "If it's too little, it's okay. I get it, and we don't have to do it." And
Mm-hmm.
they said, "No, that's great." And so it was really nice.
What were you
That's
feeling
great.
like when you made that decision? And also, Paula, I would like to wonder what this was like for you, but when you said to them that you weren't going to do it, like, thank you, but no thank you, you couldn't do
Mm-hmm.
that. What was that like for you?
Well, the reaching that point was a lot of. The best way to describe it is feeling in your own body just a tug of war, and you know something's not right, and then when you sort of reach the decision, or when you even go through the scenario, what if this is the decision I make? Then a weight lifted, and like, yeah,
Yeah.
it's okay. And I knew that my number one priority for my husband and for me was to keep our family together. And that's what.
So what do you think that's gut? Like, is that gut? What do you think that, or is that little intuition? I know exactly, I love the way you describe it.
I think it's your inner wisdom.
So
Yeah.
my situation, just because I think there are more connections that come out of all three of these, is I was at ESPN. I was anchoring Sports Center, and this is so random, but you know how like sometimes I really believe in intuition. And I was walking around the halls one day, and I noticed that they had changed the artwork. There were all these new pictures of show teams. Okay, and this was 2016. It was like August 2016 because my daughter was born in November. Okay, so I was sort of getting ready. I knew I had like a month and a half left before, at
And you
least before
you
maternity.
you said Lindsay show team. So like the for instance, like the morning show, you'd see a picture of them on the wall.
Yes,
Is that what you're
I
talking
love
about?
that you
Okay,
just
okay.
yes, exactly.
Okay, I
Thank
just
you.
wanted to make sure. Okay.
No, I'm so glad. It was right. It was the morning Sports Center. It was Sports Nation at the time. It was the 11 o'clock Sports Center. And
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what made me realize this, but I was looking and I was like, huh, where's our team? And like our team it was a really great show team, but also with the 6 o'clock, that was by far like one of the most like electric experiences I ever had, because at some point they said to me, hey, we're going to take your show and we're going to take you guys on the road, because this is the best time frame to do that, because at 6 o'clock, it's like essentially pregame before the NBA finals, before the Super Bowl.
Yes.
So I went from being in studio there to literally being like, I am living my dream. Like that's what gets me like energized, is just being in a live environment and all that. And so those years were like just incredible. But anyway, then I was walking around one day and I didn't see our picture. So I randomly said, I wasn't going to bring it up because I was worried that it would look sensitive if I brought it up to my agent, right? But I did. And I said, hey, just FYI, we're talking about something else. It's kind of weird that that's not, that they don't have any pictures of us. He's like, let me just look into it, whatever. So flash forward, come to find out, they hadn't told me. They had made the decision that they were changing the 6. They were bringing in a talk style format because they loved what these 2 other anchors were doing in that space. And they felt like the 6 was the great place to try it. They were moving me to the weekend mornings. Now in sports,
Wait. And you're pregnant, right?
right.
At this time, and they're moving you, but they haven't asked you if they can move
They
you?
hadn't told me. So what happened was
Mm.
I brought that up, right? So like intuition just out of
What?
nowhere. And so that started the conversation, and literally within the week, I was in the office of one of the managers there saying, we are so sorry that this is how we're having this conversation, but here's what we're doing.
Yeah.
We would love if you will take this job. And to their credit, there was one other manager who actually came down to Connecticut where I live and took me to coffee and was like, we really want you to do this. And I really respected him, but I had to think long and hard about the time frame of that show. All of a sudden I was going to do weekends, and it didn't jive at that point with my family situation. But to be really honest and transparent, I felt really undervalued because of the way that came down. And I also at that point didn't know who to trust, because the people that came into that role also were represented by the company that my agent was with. So he knew. So it was the whole thing, right? It was the whole thing. None of that matters now, but what did matter in that decision was it became obvious that I had a decision to make. Either I'm going to leave there or I'm going to do the weekend mornings. And what happened was I had my daughter. I hadn't had to make that firm decision yet in November when I had her, but I was done doing the 6. So over my maternity leave, I came back and I did a couple really cool projects like Special Olympics, some other things, but they were waiting for a firm decision. Was I going to move on and do that? And so I was in my garage and I remember talking to my mom because I was so stressed out. And it was what you said, which is what made me think about it. I had such a feeling of like, it's not right. And I can't say why. And this is not going to make sense to anyone else, because anyone in my shoes would be like, the Weekend Sports Center is, that's also a great rated show. But I was talking to my mom and she was like, what would you tell your daughter to do? And I was
Yeah. Oh,
that's
yeah.
what I needed.
Hmm.
That was
Yep.
it. Right?
Yep.
So what
Totally.
I've learned about myself is to make big decisions. Sometimes I pull the amount of people I need to pull until I hear the one person say what I needed or what I wanted all along. Right?
Yes.
But
So
Lindsay, you went with like you had your gut, and same with you, Stephanie, that knowing that internal peace. And you have to, I like same with me, like you follow the peace that you have, even though it might not make sense. But Lindsay, I want to ask you, and I know you're supposed to be interviewing me, but I want to flip the table a little bit because I remember seeing this because it was like you did Sports Center every night and then all of a sudden you were gone and I knew you were pregnant and I didn't know what happened and you've never talked about it really,
mhm.
publicly at least. And um, you know, this is one of the things that fires me up about like advocating for mothers because there is such a thing as the motherhood penalty, where mothers are paid less once you become a mother, 70 cents on the dollar. We're passed over on promotions. We're not deemed viable leaders anymore because we're mothers. We're scrutinized if we take time off to be with our kids, whereas dads conversely enjoy what's called the fatherhood bonus, where they're hired more often than men without children and they're paid more because they're a parent, they have to provide for their family. But I remember seeing this go down and thinking, I wonder what happened, and I know what it's like to lose my job, and there are things that I can't say, and I know there are things you can't
Yeah.
say,
Well,
but to be penalized while you're pregnant, and here you are now, soon to be a mom of two, it's it's tough. It's really tough.
I mean, I was really scared of, I think, until like now. Honestly, I first shared that story. I was doing a talk in Nashville a couple
Hmm.
months ago, and I was like, this feels like the right audience to just because of what I was talking about. But I was nervous even about that, and there was something really freeing about it. Um, and so I think we only are able to help people when we share those things. And for me, I'm
Right.
really scared about not being hired again if I talked about it. I was really nervous about that. And also I feel like so the intro in your book resonated with me so much because I think that was a reaction in my little world because, you feel like,
Yeah.
oh my God, I'm under the microscope. And people's response, especially guys like in the sports space, would be like, if I saw someone, they'd be like, hey, how you doing? How are the kids? And I mean, my children and my husband, but like they are by far the most important thing to me, hands down, no question. But that tore me up like anytime
Yeah.
because immediately I would go to, well, you don't see what I'm doing out there? Like, and by the way, what was it? Like at the time my first thing that I ended up doing was doing sidelines at Fox, but
Well, and there's no denying that like your purpose can come out of your pain, right? And like I'm glad I lost my job. It forced me onto this new path, but that doesn't mean that how things went down were great or that it was handled properly, right? And it doesn't mean that like I don't want your story to be diminished and I don't want my story to be diminished. Yes, there's certain parts that we just have to honor, but I don't want to just brush it to the side and say that, oh, that was okay. Because it's not, because for like women, mothers are discriminated against, mothers are marginalized. They're like, and we see it all over in every industry. It's not just broadcasting and film and TV and movies, so I think the more we share our stories in a way that can move the conversation forward, and that's like I don't want to be that whiny woman that's like, oh, yeah, it sucked and it wasn't right, but let's do something about it. Let's make it better. Because when you were pregnant, Lindsay, and that's the thing, like you're growing. It's scientifically proven. You're growing in your capacity and your empathy and your efficiency is scientifically changing, getting ready for that baby. And so there's so many things that motherhood brings out of us, whether the baby grew in our heart or our tummy. And I just think moms in general need a rebrand. We're cast as one thing, we're counting Cheerios and we're a risk and a liability, but like we've actually kind of become baddies. Really, like science, it's scientifically proven and physiologically proven that we've become more courageous. You talked about being more courageous, Stephanie, earlier, having the chutzpah, to go through with some of your decisions. All of that, we're better leaders and visionaries because of parenthood. So don't punish us for it. So
Yeah,
um,
I think, and I don't think you're seen as what did you call yourself? Like the woman who's like,
Counting Cheerios.
or
yeah,
whining about it.
Yes,
But I
yes.
think what's needed, because I also, to play devil's advocate, I understand, the fear of an employer being like, is she gonna leave? Because I have a lot of friends who had kids and they abandoned their careers because they wanted to be fully present with their children. But there needs to be better communication. That's what it is. It's just we need to be
yeah,
about it, and that expressing the reality of it and how that's what I think is missing. Because when I, even as an actress, so I don't have an employer per se, but I had
yeah,
an
yeah.
agent. I remember my first like studio movie. It was a small role, but it was The Devil Wears Prada, small role,
Yeah,
but a
it's so
big
good.
Really, it's such a great movie.
Yes.
movie. And my agent at the time, so I got pregnant. The movie wasn't out yet, but I got pregnant right after we did the movie. And so I told my agent, and she's a woman, and she said, "I think you're an idiot.
Really?
Who gets pregnant now? Like that's
Because she knew that your opportunities were only going to
Today was,
multiply.
yeah,
yeah."
Oh,
Well, also 9 months of being pregnant.
right. What'd you say?
wow.
I was dumbfounded, but it also was a good clue or a hint that this is not the right person for me.
Yeah, yeah, for sure.
Maybe
But that's
not.
where like, but it's this mentality in America where motherhood is punished instead of celebrated. It's very much scrutinized. And just to back up to what you just said, Stephanie, I think it's something so interesting. And I'm sure a lot of people think of it, a lot of employers do. It's like, oh, is she just going to up and leave? Because that's what a lot of women do. And I have so many men come up to me and they're like, Paula, I have this resume and this woman is like, she is successful and she is well accomplished, and then she has a kid and she leaves. And I'm like, because the workplace doesn't work for her. And it is proven, however, that we bring something so different and dynamic to the workplace as a mother, but the workplace isn't set up to keep us. Okay. It's shut because of the archaic structure of the workplace. And also like I I'm just a big proponent too, like because of motherhood, we become a better employee. It's a masterclass on leadership. And the reality is, a lot of mothers these days, 70% of mothers will be the primary breadwinner for their families. And so, if we keep paying mothers less and less, we'll continue cycles of debt and poverty. And it's not the 1950s and 60s where you could live on one salary. Most mothers are working because they have to work. And so it's like, how do we get society to understand that without motherhood, we don't have a human race. And if we don't have a human race, we don't have a labor force to actually grow our economy. So, how do we not just get them to celebrate and cherish motherhood instead of penalize it, but to also value and validate what we uniquely bring to the workforce now? Be, because courage and efficiency, emotional IQ, social cues, efficiency, productivity, it all increases once you become a parent. And that's where I'm like, there's this disconnect because she's not a liability. If you support her, it is proven that mothers and fathers are the most efficient, productive, and loyal employees you can find.
So it
But you have to
seems
support them.
one of you brought up communication, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think
Mm-hmm.
that I think that's what it is, right? And a couple different facets is like, so example, the one thing that when I was at ESPN and I had my son, they really made it easy for me when they took my
Hmm.
show on the road. Because at first I felt apprehensive, like, okay, is this going to be viewed a certain way? They actually made it easy for me to, okay, we'll get you 2 hotel rooms, you pay for one. And that was really good. Like that, and
That's
that
great.
actually was a really valuable experience taking my son with me to see now the kind of traveler he is. Like, I really love that. Right. But
That's awesome.
so that was a plus, but also, and I feel like communicating about the kinds of things and making it more commonplace to have those types of conversations and to help eliminate the fear of people who don't have women that don't have children yet, that you can
Hmm.
do this and here's how you excel
Yes.
in a role as an actress when you're on location or you're doing news or sports and you're on the scene. I also think that just having that conversation about when you're talking about being scared that people are going to leave and not come back, you're right. If you find a way to tell them what it's going to be like when they come back and meet them in the middle, I think that's everything. Because I would be very curious to hear what young women really worry
Yes.
about and feel. And I think also doing it all, like that. I've gotten some questions from people that follow me asking, knowing that we're talking about how do you do it all? Like, how do you balance the daily stuff with the work? And people really want to hear that.
Yeah.
I'm still
I don't
struggling with that.
I don't think that I think you have to get rid of the word balance because you're never going to be because something's always going to be off balance. My sister said it's either the house or me that's going to look good. One of us has to give, you know. I think she had a sign in her kitchen that says that. And so like I just know if I'm on the road, like there's things that I have to accept that I can't carry it all. And I think in America, we don't have a realistic measuring stick of what it means to be a working mom. We're still trying to like do it all and be everything. And that's why we're burning out at record levels and we don't ask for help, right? And so I just, I have learned to give myself a ton of grace in motherhood, and I do not try to carry it all anymore. I have hired somebody to clean my house once a month. I'm actually looking for somebody to help me with meals, and and that's not, and that's the thing. A lot of this like outsourcing or asking for help, it's like, oh, you're privileged or you're weak or you're a failure because you can't do it because you can't. Yeah, I can do it all, but I don't want to anymore because I'm burnt out and I'm not a healthy version for the rest of my family. And so just knowing that this is gonna look imperfect and that's okay. And I'm gonna drop a ball every single day. I'll tell my kids, I'm like, okay, what's the glass ball today and what's the plastic ball? What can we drop? Because we're gonna drop something today. The glass shatters and the plastic bounces. So just knowing I'm gonna drop a ball every day, but I ask for help. I'm no longer afraid to say or ashamed to ask for help. I think asking for help is so stigmatized here in America, whether it's hiring help, asking your friends to chip in. I just I decided to be proactive about it. So I'll call my friends. Hey, can I pick your kid up from school today? Can I take them to and from volleyball or sports practice? Could I bring you a meal today? Can I do something for you today? Like instead of because we're all living, and you probably have a different perspective too, Stephanie, because you have more of a global perspective. But like in other countries, they do life together. They like if you don't ask your friends for help, they're actually mad at you. There's a community aspect where you have family members living with you, they're pitching in. Even the attitudes of the community are we are raising up the next generation of leaders, these children. So everyone has a vested interest. Whereas here in America, raising a kid's very privatized. It's your kid, your problem, right? And so I think we've just been conditioned to try to carry it all and do it all. And that's why being a working mom in America is harder than anywhere else and why it's harder, than ever before. But my advice is don't stop trying to carry it all. It's okay. You're not perfect. You can't do it all alone. Ask for help, find community. If you don't have one, create one. Find a Facebook group. Be that to somebody else.
My mother, so two things relevant in this conversation. I think, first of all, my mother was a working mom,
Hmm.
like a lot of my friends' moms, and never had any guilt about being a working mom,
No,
and
no.
always told me, you will, if you become a mother, don't lose your identity as a woman, as who
Hmm.
you are.
Hmm. Yep.
When she would go out, I remember another mom said, oh, we can have the kids. This was in France. So also all mothers are not equal. We're all different.
No.
But one of the moms was like, oh, we can bring the kids. And my mom in front of me was like, no, that's not a night out.
So you knew where.
That's so,
But it
that's
was
so,
healthy. I love
yeah,
that. I love,
yeah,
Well, yeah, you're right.
it,
You're modeling. I mean,
yes,
that's
yeah.
really important.
yes.
And mom guilt, yeah, mom guilt's not really prevalent in other countries like it is here in America. We feel guilty over, we manifest those
Mhm.
emotions of guilt, whereas other countries, and I write about France a lot actually in my book, and about the parenting styles and how no means no, and they don't really have kids menus, and you have to let your kids be frustrated. But mom guilt doesn't exist in other countries to the level it does here because most moms have to work globally. That's just part of it. But they also have, so they take a great amount of pride in it, but they also have the structure to support them. Whereas here, we just don't.
True.
We don't have the structure. So
There's a woman, Lisa Michelle, who wrote to me on this topic today, and this is something she said to bring up. She said, the guilt I have at the end of the day when my kids want to engage or pull me into a craft or task, when I have all the other tasks I need to do at the end of the day to prep for the night and the next morning. She's like, that was her 2 cents. And I totally, like, sometimes don't you feel drained also at the end of the day? And so I try to focus on my calendar because I find that makes me feel better if I can like try to get stuff together and straight. But I've had a
yes.
couple instances lately. I was at the Kentucky Derby and I got a phone call from our nanny, who, that's how we've done this. That's how my husband and I make it work. She's a part of our family. She's been with us since my son was 3 months old. And she said, Lindsay, I'm here at the trampoline park for the birthday party, but no one's here from the party. And it was because the party was the following Monday. And I had like, so I am that mom who tries to compensate and do things. And then it's like, oh, your
Yes.
child's at school an hour early. That meeting wasn't today,
Uh-huh.
right? Like, I mean,
Yep. Yep. Mm-hmm.
but one other thing I realized for me, I try to do is,
So funny.
so I don't know. I try to find tasks that really I enjoy doing that I know
Yes.
really like, and try to focus on like doing those with them. But I don't know.
Yeah.
I just,
Well, and also related to the comment from your
yeah,
the person
Lisa
who
Michelle
found, yeah,
Court.
Lisa. I remember as a kid, my mom would come home from work at 7:30 at night, and she would start dinner, and I would come. So I had an older brother, so I was alone a lot doing my homework, and I would come in the kitchen. Can I recite my poetry with you or whatever? Do my thing, and she would say no. Can you see I'm cooking? And my mom was the most loving, and but in that moment, like, and I'd be like, oh, and she's like, no, not now. Now is not the time.
Yes.
But it was
Mm-hmm.
so good
So
for me
interesting.
to
Yeah.
realize
Yeah.
she wasn't trying. She was doing,
love that.
you know,
Was it like
she
that
had
was like
reached her
her
limit,
time?
and she was
Yeah.
like, no,
Yeah.
now. And that didn't mean she didn't help me other times, but I had to understand there were moments where my mom was not available. It wasn't all the time that.
See,
Yeah.
that's because the French mentality, but here we're expected to be this mommy martyr and lay our lives down. And of course, we're going to do anything to protect our kids, but we also like need to say no and have boundaries, and that's good for our kids to see that. A lot of the guilt that I felt was about work, and I'm like, oh, but and like, can you really work and raise your kids? And there's so much data to show that children of working mothers, and all moms work, but mothers in the workplace, like the girls grow up to be more confident, and the boys are better partners, and they pitch in more around the house. And so I had to release a lot of that guilt, but I also had to stop demonizing work to my kids, because kids have something, and I learned this from a friend of mine, who travels a lot, and he's like, kids have what's called mirror neurons. So if we say, oh, mommy's going to be gone, I'm going to miss you so much, are you going to miss me? They're going to be like, yeah, I'm going to miss you. But if you're like, mommy's gone for 3 days and I get to go to the Kentucky Derby and see history be made, and you invite them into the conversation and you tell them the impact that you get to have, they're going to repeat that back. And so he's like, it's no surprise that kids get to be 18 years old and don't want to get a job because we've demonized work. So that was like a light bulb went off, and I was like, Oh my gosh, that's like I've got to stop demonizing it and I have to invite them in and tell them what's going on and invite the questions and tell them about the impact that I'm having because we are almost expected to totally lose ourselves in motherhood here in America, and if we don't, we're bad moms. And I'm just like, that's BS. I'm sorry, I'm done with it. I'm not trying to carry it all. I'm not going to be a perfect mom. I don't want to be a perfect mom anymore. I'm going to drop the ball every single day. Are we good with that? Great. I love you. I'll do anything for you. But mommy also has things that are on her heart that she wants to pursue. And here's why it's really, really important. And I love you guys. And, it's just like, I'm done. I'm done trying to be a perfect mom. I'm done trying to carry it all. Uh, I'm sorry. I'm not going to do it anymore because I'm not a good person when I try to be. I'm not good to my kids. I'm not good to my partner, to my husband. I'm not good to anybody.
When you were saying I'm done being a perfect mom, and you said earlier the athletes on the sports line was how are the kids?
Mm-hmm.
One of the questions I had a lot of trouble with when my first son was born was, so do you love being a mom? And I was like, huh? And
Yes.
I hated it because I felt like it was putting me into a box. All of a sudden, I was a mom. And I was like, I love my children. Do I love being a mom? And then I was like, that means like doing all the crap that I don't necessarily love. And that question made me feel so ill at ease.
Mhm.
And and I feel like when we focus on being the perfect mom, or what does it mean to be a mom, instead of Melissa Bernstein from
Yes.
yes, she has this thing. Melissa Bernstein invented the toys Melissa and Doug. You know
Oh
The
my,
brand.
yes, I
Yes.
loved
Yes.
Melissa and Doug. Are you
yes,
kidding me? Yes.
yes. So she has we were talking one day and she said, I love what all you described is you are living in the verb and not living in the noun. And I was like,
Uh,
what does that mean? And she said, you're
Oh.
talking about verbs, action. You like to create, you like to be curious, you like to adventure, but you're not talking about being a mother, being an entrepreneur, being. So that she said, that's
Oh.
living in the noun. When we live in the noun, we
mm.
limit ourselves. When we live in the verb, it frees us. And I was like,
Oh,
oh,
that's really
That
interesting.
is
That's
interesting.
so
That's why
interesting.
she's so good at making toys.
she's so
She
creative.
is so good. That's so good. I also love that Paula talks a lot, and I think this goes with that, about involving the men in your life.
Oh,
And
that's huge.
I am such a fan of hearing how other people do that and how other people communicate. Like, one thing I would really love to do
Mm,
is have more conversations about how do you decide what you're doing for holidays, because that's really hard for me and for us, like
mm-hmm,
especially when you have families that live away, but also when it comes to the parenting and the freedom to talk about what you want as a woman, as a professional,
mm-hmm.
besides what you're doing as a mom, or how you're momming is the verb.
Yeah, yep, yep,
I really think that you are spot on with that realization about making sure that
yeah,
they're as much a part of that conversation.
yep. I think so much of it is generational too. Like we see how our parents did it and our grandparents, right? But that wasn't really a reality. And I had so many uh, um like when I was writing the book, I had so many aha moments and I realized I had a ton of blind spots because just because it's how you were raised doesn't mean that's how it always is. And one of the chapters I talk about the history of American families, and I realized that the most traditional family throughout America, and when we think traditional here in America, Stephanie, everybody idolizes and romanticizes the 1950s and 60s with June Cleaver and the husband worked and the dad worked and the mom stayed home and all was peachy, right? But I realized in the 1950s the reason that it was good for part of the people part of the time because black people were forced out of the workforce, women were essentially forced out of the workforce, men came home with lipstick on their collars, so it was not a more moral time, and if women were forced to work they were typically paid less. We had teen pregnancies had a huge spike, a third of the country was in poverty, and I realized, oh my gosh, we are romanticizing a feeling, but not the reality of it. I don't want to go back to that. I don't want to go back to that quote unquote traditional family, but the most traditional family in America was the family that worked side by side. Lindsay, you talk about getting the men involved. You partnered together. The partners co-labored, they co-produced, they raised the children together. And like that's why I'm so encouraged by this next generation. You see dad stepping up to the plate. It's it's not like it doesn't have anything to do with gender roles or any of that, but it has everything to do with partnering well together. Why should the woman be the default for everything from the beginning? Well, that's because we have maternity leave and she's the default out of the gate. We don't have paternity leave, right, in this country. And we don't have maternity leave either. But, inviting the men into the conversation, I think, is something that's key to changing the game for mothers and for working moms because we're missing the solution right there if we emasculate men and we're like, you're awful, and we've done a good job of doing that. But there's a way to invite them into the conversation to realize they have their own set of expectations and toxic messages that they've heard from this country, including they're only as good as their paycheck. Your only job is to provide for this family. And that really started in the 50s, where the bonds of obligation, we started pushing men out of the home in the 50s, right? We're like, just bring home a paycheck. And if you don't, you're a failure, right? So understanding men already come into this conversation, hearing their own toxic messages. And I think men can do more for gender equality than anyone else in this country. I really, truly do. And I think that they can do it not just by stepping up to the plate and like not pitching in, not babysitting. You are partnering. You are giving an example to your children of what it means to be a partner, right? But the greatest thing I think that men can do in this country is to take their paternity leave and all of it, and if they don't have it, to fight for it. Because if you think about it, um, out of the gate, the woman is the default for every single thing out of the gate on maternity leave. It's her taking care of the baby, cleaning, cooking, everything. So out of the gate, she becomes the default or the she fault, as Eve Rodsky likes to say. And I think that you look at all the data. If men take their paternity leave, it mitigates postpartum depression. It increases the bond with the child, but more so, it levels the playing field for parenting that child and partnering in parenting that child together, so that it's not just all on the mom. If you're parenting and raising the child together in the mundane and the crazy of parenting right from the beginning. So I think that's the greatest thing that men can do. And that right there does more for gender equality, I think, than anything else.
I want to ask before you guys got to skedaddle, I know, but when we talk about jobs and getting like what
Hmm.
we're working towards, what you're creating, what you, Paula, are creating, what we're doing now, how do you think? What are your thoughts on getting back into the workforce in a meaningful way, or just on how you
Hmm.
do that, right? Because I know one of the things that I've sort
Hmm.
of opened my eyes and ears to is the concept of failure. I've gotten a lot more comfortable with that.
Mm.
And it
Yep.
happened by
Good.
being around more people in different industries too, and knowing like, hey, things don't have to look so linear. Like, try things. It doesn't have
No.
to be a failure if this doesn't carry on, or if that it can be a season, but I think that that's a really interesting topic also.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think you have to focus on just expressing whatever you are creating, expressing it with as much authenticity and the way you want it, and as much meaning as it can have for you. And that doesn't come from a selfish place, but that's the best we can do. Then whether it's a
Hmm.
failure or not is out of our control. And at the end of it's like, for me, when I go on an audition, I used to be like focused on, oh, I want to get the job. What are they looking for? What is going to make them like me? That was me at the beginning. And then it didn't work.
Uh-huh.
And finally I realized, oh, I want to leave the audition being like, yes, I love what I did, and nobody else could have done it.
Yeah.
Awesome.
And then whether I get the job or not is out of my control. And I think it applies
Yeah.
to everything we do. You just want to,
Like, it's the mindset, and it's more like, is this a fit for me, or just feeling just feeling that sense of I did.
giving it your all,
Yeah.
being curious, being proud of what you're doing and learning. And then you're going to learn even more if you're attempting something new. Great.
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Lindsay, I think you said it, like, the changing the mindset of failure, and I think flipping the script on failure. I heard someone say, they said failure is the down payment on success. And that was such an aha moment for me. Failure is the down payment on success. It's not a failure. I've learned more from my failures. And trust me, like, I've had more failures than I have perceived successes. And so like flipping the script, changing your perspective on what failure looks like. And also, I've learned to detach my identity and my value from what I do. So, like, if I had completely placed my identity in what I did as a broadcaster, and trust me, I did, and I had an identity crisis without it. But you need to detach your who you are as a person from what you do, because your job's going to change like a lot throughout your life. And for me, that gave me like my value is not in a job, it's not in a title anymore. And that has given me the permission to try new things in new seasons. And if it fails, it fails. That's fine. But it's the down payment towards success. I know I'm going to be called to do a lot of things in different seasons. I'm not just called to do one thing. I'm not called to be a broadcaster. In this season, I feel very strong calling to advocate for mothers in the workplace, and that's what I'm doing. I'm going for it, right? And so I'm giving myself the permission to try new things in new seasons. I'm realizing failure's part of it. It's the down payment on success. I've got to give myself the permission to try new things. My identity doesn't come from this, but I'm following that thing that scares me. I have a peace about it, coming back to the peace, but I'm still scared about it. But I have a, a piece that I'm supposed to be going for this thing right now, and that's to advocate for working moms. And my why is because like family's so important to me, and I want to help strengthen families. I want to strengthen my family, and but I think it's hard to give yourself the permission to try something new because you often typecast yourself. You're a broadcaster, you're an actress. Okay. And also, what's your name and what do you do for a living? Our identity's all in it. Um, I had to give myself the permission to see myself in a different capacity, and then permission for other people to see me in a new capacity. But I know my value at the end of the day isn't in my vocation.
How
So,
you made me think about something there. How do this is actually going to feel like a sound bar, a sound a side swipe after what we talked about.
yeah, that's all right.
How do you guys talk to your kids? Like, how do you have meaningful conversations after school and find out what's really going on in their lives? Do you?
No.
Mm. She has a teenager. Teenagers are like notorious
Try
for clamming up.
being even when they were little, bath time was a great time to talk. Now
Yeah.
that they're
Mm-hmm.
the teenager, driving is a great time to talk. There's like these little moments
Uh-huh.
that are the dinner
Yep.
table for some reason has never been. You would think it's a great time, but it
Yeah.
just I don't know. They don't like
bedtime kind
Yeah.
of.
bedtime. Yes.
Yeah. I think the best times, and our kids are in different phases and every mom is different. And some kids take the bus to school. That 30 minutes that I get with my middle child every day in the car. And I learned through a communications expert, she's like, don't ask them, you can't ask open-ended questions like, how was your day? Like, you have to say, what was the best part of your day? And then if they're not opening up, just say, hey, here is the best part about my day. And, this happened and I'm not so sure that I handled it correctly. And then you say, how do you think I handled it? What is your take on it? And you get them to kind of weigh in on your own situation. But the one question that I ask, so asking those, not asking a closed-ended question is key, but also like getting them to give you advice kind of on your own, like what's going on in your life is good for teens. But the one question I ask my teenagers that has really changed the game for all three of my kids, actually, they're 9, 13, and 15. I read this and they said, ask your teen, how can I best support you right now? And they start opening up about, I'm like, so this morning I asked my daughter, how can I best support you this week? And she just starts opening up, right? And that's like before school. And I asked my son that on the way in the car this morning. So like just coming up with a question like, how can I my kids know every week I'm going to ask them, and it might happen more than once a week, how can I best support you in this moment? So that, I mean, we don't have all the answers. We don't have to act like we're perfect. Sometimes it's just like, how can I support you?
What's an
Right?
example of something that they would say in that as a response?
Yeah.
I'm curious.
Yeah, I mean, my son might say, like if I said, how can I best support you this week? He'd be like, I just really on Friday, I want to go to Walmart before school and I want to look for sports cards. and I want you to support this hobby that I have. My daughter just said, just keep cheering me on this week. I got a lot of stuff going on with sports, and she's got some drama with some friends. But I'll also ask about, if they open up to me about a particular situation. I'm not going to try to give them advice because they don't want your advice. I'll just say, how can I, like, if my daughter is going through a situation with a friend at school, well, I wouldn't even call her a friend. Um, and I'm like, how can I best support you in this situation? I don't have all the answers, and she'll tell me how I can best support her and give me specific ways. Yeah, isn't it such a good
It
question? I
is.
can't take any credit for it. I read it.
Well, even like with your husband or your significant other,
Yeah,
like
Don't be a fixer.
that's,
yeah,
yeah. My
no,
husband was like, why don't you ever ask me that question, Paula? I'm like, because I'm supposed to ask my children. That's what the article said. He's like, you can ask me that
but you know
question
what's funny?
too.
I was about to be real depressed for a hot minute on Mother's Day, not because like I knew everyone was gonna celebrate it, and I was just having this moment of like I went out of town to do a charity event, and I really wanted to do that, but I was feeling just I was having a little pity party, and then I saw Dr. Becky Kennedy. Do you know who Dr. Becky is? She wrote the book
No.
Inside, and I started following her.
Okay, yes,
And
yes.
she had this little blurb where she said, "Moms, don't be thinking about like, don't expect them to do it for you. Pipe up and say what you want." And I was like, yes, of course. So I literally was like on Saturday, you know what I would really like tomorrow when I get home? Like, I would love to just go hit tennis balls with us and the kids and blah, blah, blah. And that's what we ended up doing. And I was like, oh my God,
Yeah.
Nice.
communication,
Uh-huh.
right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. They can't read our minds.
No.
I told my kids, I was like, I want a low country boil, which
Well,
is
that's
something we do
nice.
down here in the South. So good. It's like Stephanie, it's really good. You like
We had that.
you pour a bunch of like it's like seafood and potatoes and
Crawfish.
sausage, and you
Pork.
boil it in crawfish, and you just dump it on the table with Old
Yeah,
Bay
it's
seasoning.
like,
It's so
It's like
good.
an American version
Yes.
of a bouillabaisse.
a boy. Oh,
See,
yeah.
yes, it's amazing.
Yeah.
And then they
So
throw
yeah,
it on
you
the
just
table
yeah,
on newspaper.
Oh, even
So
better.
yours is
it's
nice.
so
Yeah.
good. And you just roll it up
Oh, that's
afterwards. It
so
was
cute.
amazing. Yeah. Uh-huh.
I love that.
Yeah.
Wait, what about kids?
Oh,
One last thing that I
yeah.
learned from somebody, from a psychologist, it was great too, is to hear how sometimes a child will just say something. Um, an example would be, this and this happened to so and so, let's say. And it seems like it has no meaning, but a lot of times they'll say that to start something or to give you a clue about something. So
So interesting.
to listen really for those small things that they might volunteer, and it actually has it's an end to something bigger.
Yeah.
And like,
Yeah.
so what? And then follow it up with questions. And that helped me a lot.
So it might be like a thought that they're having or something that they're sort of working through kind of for
Yes.
themselves.
And it
Yeah.
also happens with, like with a teenager now is, they're having a sleepover, but I can sense that there's something a little funny in the way he says it. And I'm like, he actually wants me to say no to this. But then,
Ah, yeah. Uh-huh.
so the
That's
things that
so
are not
interesting.
said are sometimes the things that are.
Wow.
Yeah, yeah.
That is
And Lindsay, we learned, as question askers and interviewers, there's like the mirroring, which is repeating the last three words that your subject said. So if they're like, I just am having a really hard time with it, and you say, hard time with it, and then that gets them to keep opening up. That mirroring that you'll use in an interview, or hostage negotiators use mirroring a lot. Use it with your kids, because it's essentially like being a hostage negotiator with your children sometimes. But just that mirroring is something else you can do. But how can I best support you is the best question you can honestly
I
ask.
love that. So you had a low
And
country
you
boil.
can use it broad and situational. What's that,
So
hon?
you had a low country boil for Mother's Day. What'd you do?
We had sushi. We went to sushi at night, and then just had a relaxing day.
Oh, yeah.
Nothing
I love it.
special, really.
All right. Well, you guys are both amazing at what you do, at the things, all the things,
Thank
but also
you.
amazing moms and amazing workers, entrepreneurs, all the things. Is there anything else you want to share?
I want to
Yeah.
say thank you for bringing us together and
Yes.
helping people open up and have conversation. It's super helpful.
Thank you. I know. I learned a lot from you guys.
It's important to share our stories, and Lindsay, I'm proud of you for starting to share yours.
Thank
And
you.
you're a good mom, and both of you, you don't have to carry it all, ladies. You don't have to. You're good mamas.
Thank you. Well,
Thank you. Good to meet you.
I know. So you can.
Good to meet you. I'm so excited to meet you.
I know. Oh, I had one friend who said, "Can you ask Stephanie if Eddie's really is good looking in person?" From a but you don't have to answer.
Oh my God. Eddie's blue eyes.
That's your answer right there.
There we
Eddie's a
have
hottie.
Congratulations
Awesome.
to you on wrapping that season, and so awesome.
Thank you.
Yeah, and to your selfish, to your app. That's a whole other episode. Your app. I mean, I feel like what you guys are doing is very much in the same vein, also.
To be continued.
TBC. Yes.
TBC. All right.
Thank you, Paula. Seriously, thank you.
Thank you, honey. Thank you.
Oh, what a great conversation. And I love hearing the perspective that both Stephanie and Paula had, because it only adds to the conversation and hopefully is helpful for people out there that might be feeling the same way. So that's it for this episode of Lunch with Lindsay. Don't forget, you can hear this episode anywhere you get your podcast, and you can watch the whole thing either on Family Made or my YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and leave a rating. Thanks so much. See you next time.